Welcome to Cinema Express. And firstly, my pleasure to have you on the show. And
thank you so much for having me. I'm just so I was flattered to get your invitation, and I'm so happy to be here to talk to you.
Because the moment I saw Connected, I just knew that we had to speak because probably it's also the time of the release because people are at home, people want to know a lot of things, and personally, I'm not someone who watches a lot of docu series, and I'm more of a filmy guy. And so I was trying to experiment into what all extra I could see, and then I see this mind-blowing series, and I knew that I had to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for crossing the aisle from fiction into nonfiction just to talk to me. I'm very flattered.
And it's been like a wonderful rabbit hole, like exactly every episode of Connected. I'm just going down into the world of nonfiction and enjoying it a lot.
Oh, that's great.
I just want to ask, starting that, what was the kind of brainstorming that went behind, choosing these 6 topics? Because it's a lot of things in your mind, how do you just bring it down to 6?
Yeah, it was hard. I had so many ideas. Really, ultimately, each of them kind of has its own sort of little story. Like I feel like, for example, the clouds episode. I knew I wanted to do something about climate change. It felt like that, like with this big a platform, that's kind of the thing you have to talk about. And I was like, how can I do this in a new way? And then I had this idea of like sculpting the shape of this episode where you start with a cloud and you end with a cloud, and then you go to all kinds of funny places in the middle. So that was one, the idea of climate change led to the cloud episode. Another one, poop. I was like, poop is just fun. It's just interesting. It's just weird. Dust was a thing that I felt like that's a topic that people would write off. It seems so boring. It seems so kind of old. And to me, there's a kind of fun to that where it's like, ooh, I can really subvert people's expectations. I can take something they think is boring, and then I can take it in a whole new direction. And then for me, the most fun of all, and the one I've gotten the biggest reaction to, which is a massive surprise to me, was the digits episode, the kind of mathy Benford's Law episode.
Benford's Law, yes. And to see how people are correlating it with the COVID data, that was like,
And not just COVID data, all kinds of data, all these people all over the world with all these different data sets, just plugging it in, seeing if it'll work. And when we had the idea for that episode, like I remember all of us, even myself, I'm like, is this even possible? Like, could we do 45 minutes on a single mathematical observation? No way, not possible. Like even the director was like, "Are you sure we don't want to just do a tangent about some other things in here?" And I was like, "No. I think it can work. I think it can work." And it sort of was a dare almost to ourselves. We picked that one to say like, it's an experiment. Like, could this possibly work? And in a way, it's really paid off. You just search Twitter for Benford's Law, and people are applying it to like, my favorite one was someone took in the New York Public Library. They have an archive of historical restaurant menus.
Oh, okay.
Right. Who knew? And someone looked through those menus, took out all the prices for all the food items from these historical restaurant menus.
Okay.
And then it applied. Benford's Law applied. That distribution of digits applied. And it was just so many things. There was, I think maybe I said Indian train passenger data and COVID data, city population data in like Israel, South American, there were all kinds of economic things. Like people are just, even scientists, all these other people have just randomly have access to these data sets and are like, once they see this episode, they say, let me try it. And it usually works. And when it doesn't, it often doesn't for interesting reasons.
Because, such realizations and, such discoveries can actually change a person. You start thinking if everything is by chance or there is actually a pattern to these things. So how has discovering these things on the go impacted you? Because you are the first one to realize these things before we do. So how was that?
Yeah. I mean, each one is kind of an experiment. So I think I'm sort of realizing it as it's going. And in a way, when I put it out, when I put the episode out to hear people's feedback, that's how I know the experiment either worked or didn't work. But I think the way that it's changed me, seeing all of these things, for the show, we kind of finished the show and now I've released the show at this time during this global pandemic. And it's really been a kind of, it's almost been therapeutic in a way. Like it's so dispiriting. The stories all around us, the tragedies all around us in your country and mine, the way we've been locked down, it kind of sucks something out of you. It makes you just kind of look at the world as this kind of dangerous, scary place. Our connections are actually our liabilities. They're actually our threats against us, you know? And to me, this show, working on this, has helped remind me, and I hope it helps remind viewers, like the same thing, that it's actually the flip, that all these connections around us they're weird, they're also surprising, they're also beautiful, they're poetic, they're also kind of, what you realize is we are intermingled with everybody else, with this planet that we live on, and I think that has to be foremost in our mind. We can never forget that.
Because talking about this connection, I think the dust episode was a revelation to me, because who would have thought, something in chart impacts your rainforest? That was for me my personal favorite. So if you had to choose, what would be your personal favorite episode? Like your most
I think that one
revelation.
That one is my favorite too. That one's the one that we pitched the show with, and we kind of first sort of had the idea of, and even built the kind of structure of the show around. And to me, the profound moment where it clicked to me was like, oh, okay, there's this beautiful thing going on above our heads. And then the moment it clicked was when, wait a second, the origin of this dust is in this long dead fish. And the result of this dust is in this kind of vibrant, alive place. And it became a story of life and death. And it became a story of the ways that the dead, the kind of the stuff we've all written off and forgotten about, it's actually alive and well all around us in these subtle ways. And to me, that's, as someone who studied history, that's something very powerful. As someone who's, and I'm sure you have, and everybody has, especially in these times, you've maybe lost friends or family members. Somehow this felt like, to me, it hit me in a surprisingly personal place.
Yeah. Because you learn a lot of things during the course of this series. But was there a point where you actually were overwhelmed by the kind of details that hit you? Like every single time you learn something, you're just overwhelmed by it.
Oh yeah, I mean, to me, the problem, and it's funny in my radio work as well, I have the same problem, which is that I love every detail. I fight for every detail, and my editors will be like, "No, that's too much. We can't do it. It's too less is more. Less is more." And I'll be like, "No, more is more. More is more. More is more. Let's put more." But like, for instance, in the dust episode, there were a bunch more kind of segments we were thinking of adding. There was a whole other kind of fascinating world, which I could tell you if you're interested.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that dust that's traveling over our heads around the world, they've been doing studies, and what they've found actually, and it actually dates back to literally Charles Darwin on the Beagle, the voyage he took around the world, where he basically came up with where he observed what would become natural selection. He also was collecting dust at that time, and when he did, he put it under a microscope, and what he saw were not just the dust, the molecules of dust, but also the creatures, like little microscopic organisms. And for him, it was so strange, because imagine you're you're on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and then you see something falling. It's like as if corpses are falling out of the sky. It makes no sense. Like, how did this get here? Why is this here? And researchers since have done studies, and what they thought was, when the dust goes way high up there, the sun, like the radiation just would kill it all.
Okay.
But no, there are living things that are alive in that dust that are like preserved, that are able to, when they get back to favorable places, they can reproduce themselves. So that idea, just this whole story was suffused with life and death, and what does it mean to be dead, and what does it mean to be alive, and that we totally cut out. That's not even in the thing, but it's so beautiful and profound. And I think there were so many things like that we were just, okay, we got to cut it. We're streamlining this shape. We got to, but there's so many other things that just like, it really was overwhelming, that the tiny details, like you feel like, I mean, I feel like I've been trained to see the world in a blade of grass, you know what I mean? And then what you see is like, oh, wait a second, there are blades of grass everywhere. There's so many blades of grass.
But how do you come to the decision that, okay, let's not put this profound information out, let's choose this, and let's not put this mind-blowing information and this. So how tough was it on the editing table? Because how do you say that this is not fascinating enough? Because everything that's coming on the show is like different levels of fascinating.
Yeah, well, what we realized was in making this, and kind of it was an experiment, like this whole story structure of like, okay, we're going to go here for 6 minutes, then jump over here, totally different place, 6 minutes, jump, totally different place. So that whole structure was very, in a way, it's straitjacketed. It's very helpful because it's fun, but it also straitjacketed us in a helpful way. Whereas you think, okay, we just got to go, we got to move because we have 5 more places to go. And if we spend too long here and we go on too many tangents, you're going to lose the thread. There was a real danger of that, where it's like, what is this episode about again? What are we doing? And so you really have to kind of be like those editors who were telling me to cut everything. They had a kind of a big picture, and the directors and whoever else, they had the bigger picture in mind, where it was like, okay, part of the purpose of this is to blow your mind, but also part of the purpose is to get you onto the next one, right? To sort of fling you onto the next one, and then finally all of it hopefully will pay off with this big, this big mind-blowing, this big takeaway, like in the Dust episode, that idea that, that life is coming out of death, right? Yeah. And so knowing that from the end, you kind of look from the beginning and you think, okay, which mind-blowing facts sort of serve that big idea? And if they don't, then they're gone. And if they do, then we kind of carefully build them, and we're sort of building to that ultimate climax, crescendo.
And at any point during your learnings, doing research and during filming, were you worried about what kind of learning will come up? Like, what might you just learn that might turn your idea of whatever is normal?
Yeah, it's funny. There are moments when, because you never know. You never know how people are going to take things, and you never know what will. Like, if you say this in a certain way, will people, like, there's certain segments where you kind of know that already. So if you're going into the world of agriculture and pig farming, right, there's people have a lot of complicated feelings, and rightly so, about pig farming, right? And about factory farms and about all these things. But for me, I'm like, that's not why I'm telling the story. I'm telling the story about surveillance. So how do you go in there and kind of put those feelings to bed, but then also not feel like you're sort of an apologist for giant factory farms? Like, I don't eat pork. I don't support that. But at the same time, that's not the reason I'm going there to tell that story. Another thing is, like with the Benford's Law, there have been some people who have approached me to say, oh, now we can see like all the COVID numbers are bogus and everything is wrong. And, and also the, in the States here, that the video of George Floyd is a deep fake, or, like a lot of people have tried to use things that they've learned in the show as a way to discount things that are out in our society that are very real and very serious. And so to me, it's a double-edged sword. There's nothing, you can't control everything. And you can try and anticipate how people will see it, but you can't anticipate everything. You can't control everything. So there were certain moments where I was like, do I go here? Do I not? But ultimately, you just do your best. You fact check it and you put it into the world, and you hope that it sort of does more good than harm. Unfortunately, like Yeah, like so many other things.
One of the talking about how you let people form their opinions. One of my favorite portions of Connected was the fact that you never let something like doomsday call, because you're dealing with climate change, you're dealing with talking about surveillance. You don't give him
Nuclear
doomsday
weapons.
call, nuclear weapons. There's no ominous signs. You speak
Yeah.
about how the cloud cover is changing and how that could be a major point. But still, there is no judgment. There is no clarion call for saying save the environment. You're putting out things for people to take in and understand. So, how did that judgment come into place? Because it would not be easy to not put your opinion also into the narration.
Yeah, part of that comes from the fact that sort of I've learned my craft the many years I've spent in public radio. So for us here, I don't know what you guys have public radio, right?
We go with more of there's some FM channels, but they don't generally cater to these segments. But now you have podcasts coming up, so now we have the vibrant scene there.
Right. So for us, like in public radio, the fact that it has this, it's not quite private, it's not quite public. So we're able to say, we have independence, we can say what we think, but you also want to be like, to me, I really do believe that if you sort of like, I'm trying to speak to a broad audience and I'm trying to get a lot of broad buy-in, right? And I think that to me, a lot of, especially around COVID and around wearing masks and staying at home and these kinds of things, a lot of people, the move is to bully people, to shame people, to get really kind of activisty. And I think there is a role and purpose for that. And sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's harmful. To me, I think the way to win over people is not to do any of that. To me, the way to win over people is to tickle them, is to seduce them, is to kind of befriend them, And I think that there's a way to do that will, let people kind of cogitate, let them make their own, like, here are a bunch of pieces. And you can put it together however you want. You can combine it with your own experience. You can think a little bit and feel how you feel about it. And hopefully, ultimately, like, there's no question climate change is a problem. There's no question nuclear weapons are a problem. There's no question surveillance is a problem. But hopefully people will see these things and kind of help see it in a new way, think about it in a new way, and maybe ultimately sort of come to those ideas, those conclusions, those actions themselves. I hope. I mean, I like to give the viewer that kind of credit. Like, I think people are smarter than generally nonfiction TV gives them credit for.
So, but how easy was it to convince yourself and your team, of course, that people would love this connection? Like, they would love to make this connection, because people can go with different tangents, but you have a strict connection in mind. So, how convinced were you that people would also make that kind of a connection?
Oh, so it was so hard, because there were times because I mean, as I say, this whole thing felt like an experiment. Like, there were times when we would make it and we were just over explaining, and it would be like, I don't even care anymore wherever you're about to take me. There are times when we would really under explain. People are like, why did, like, it just feels too jarring. Like, where are we? There was an old show that was one of the kind of inspirations, an old BBC show that was one of the inspirations of this show, called Connections. And it would do the same thing. It was not about science. It was mostly about kind of the history of technology, but I really loved it. And it had a similar kind of, issue where sometimes it was really hard to follow. And so I would kind of make these outlines, and we would sort of think about it, and we would go over it and over it and over it and over it and over it, and try to kind of like clarify the logic, make that logic as clear as possible. Because, and sometimes it was, like, sometimes you don't want it to be clear, even when the way you present it, but at least for me, it needs to be clear behind the scenes. I need to know what the connective tissue is here, even if I'm sort of in a joking way. Because, like, if it's just, sometimes it's like, like sometimes we would try it and it would be like a pun or something, you know, it would be some fun wordplay, some joke or something. And then you get to the next thing and then you're like, what am I doing here again? This is a joke? Like how this feels like a throwaway thing. But so it really was like, it took a lot of trial and error. Like, okay, what if we did this? And then gaming it out and then doing the whole episode and getting to the end and being like, okay, now that we're at the end, did all of those steps along the way get us here? Or were some of them just totally, a loop-de-loop out of the way, you know?
A personal favorite of mine in the entire series was the fact that you had a very childlike curiosity to know things. Because not just sermonizing and not just preaching and not just teaching people, you were learning along with it. Because when after seeing the series, I felt like when we're children, we ask a lot of questions. Growing up, we stop. This was a reminder that just don't stop asking questions. So, what do you think if a person who is not very used to the kind of, like someone like me who's not very used to the non-fiction world, what would be their takeaway? Like they see something like this and their mind blown, they're awestruck, but what else is beyond that?
Yeah, I think I so much think about, I mean, this question that you're asking, I think about it all the time. I think we so much of the way we are schooled is about getting the right answer. And who I don't know, to me, who cares if the answer is right? I mean, the question, to me, the joy comes from the question. The joy comes from, for me as a science journalist, I think what my goal is to, just as you say, like awaken people to the questions they already have inside of them and they don't even know. You know, you walk through the day, and I mean, this happens to me. I think this happens to everybody. And you have a question, it'll emerge like, oh, why is that thing that way? And then you kind of just forget it and you keep walking, you know, you keep moving on. Or you look it up and you get like a kind of one level deep answer on Wikipedia or in a Google search or whatever. And then you're done. You're satisfied. You're totally satisfied.
Yeah.
And to me, I think it's the fun is pushing past that. The fun is like taking your own questions seriously, even when they're dumb. Like the clouds episode is based on a dumb question. How is the cloud that we, upload our selfies to related to the clouds above our heads? And it's not. I mean, it's really not, but it is, and it's like trying to imagine a question like that and really give yourself over to the question and try to kind of, to me, luxuriate in it. What you realize is like, you think about it less like a problem, like, and I know in math we talk about like word problems or math problems. They're not problems, right? They're like opportunities. They're fun. It's a fun detective story. It's a scavenger hunt. Like that's what it's like. To me, it's about fun, and the fun is in the question. It's not in the answer. The answer sometimes is fun, sometimes is not. But the point is it's the question. It's that initial seed and the journey. And once you reframe it as I don't like, it's fun to learn new things. It's fun to indulge your curiosity. It's fun to actually like ask yourself a question and then take it seriously and then go off and become that detective and find that answer. Because who knows, maybe nobody's even ever asked that question that you're asking before. So to me, to me, questions are like, that's my job. I'm a professional questions asker. And I feel like it's the luckiest job that I could possibly have. Because you're never going to run out of them. And it's a kind of, it's a deep wellspring of joy for me in my life.
So someone who's a professional question asker and, who loves being behind the mic, how was it in front of the camera?
Oh, it's terrible. I was I feel like I was never self-conscious, and now I'm kind of self-conscious. Like my posture is terrible. My teeth are crooked, as you can see. But to me, what was exciting about this, as much as I hated watching myself, what I loved was the ability, which is a thing you can't do on radio, is to watch the face of the interviewer. Like the thing we're doing right now. You can actually you can see someone light up, like when they're talking about their research or when they realize something, that's like, oh yeah, you're right. Like that moment when you can capture that face, like that's really, really, it's gold. And in radio, you have to translate that in different ways. But in video and TV and in film, like you have that face, it's right in front of you, and you get to capture all the kind of glory of that moment of someone, equally for me of feeling dumb as often for my guests of kind of coming to this moment of clarity. It's really it's something special.
What next? Like, is there a season 2? Is there something else you want to explore in the space?
I hope there's a season 2. That really depends on how many people watch the show, and if Netflix determines that's enough for to keep their kind of investment going. But for me, like I have so many more ideas. I have so many more ideas I want to take a crack at. But also, I'm still working at my podcast that I work at, Radio Lab. We have some really exciting stuff in the works there that we're just about to announce, but we haven't announced yet. I think I have so many more different kinds of projects and different kinds of media. I want to do so many things, and this is just the beginning. I feel sort of excited. The world around us is so kind of chock full, chock full of stuff to explore and to marvel at, and I won't stop until somebody makes me.
I don't think they would, because I was discussing this series with a lot of my family and friends, and they were all intrigued. They wanted to know what next. They wanted to know extra. So I just want to ask you, like, if this is not a 6-episode series and this was, let's say, a 8 or 10 episode series, what else did you have in mind? I just want to know what else did you have in mind for the next 2 or 3 episodes.
Okay, let me think of a good one. There were so many we did. I did one about, I pitched one about, I don't know why this one just came to my mind. Mines, Mines.
Okay.
So there are, giant mines all over the world, including in India, many of which, are still active, but there are a lot of like abandoned mines. And to me, what I got excited about is the idea of looking at research that was done all across the world in abandoned mines, basically. And you can find so much is going on, so much fascinating work, including about public health, because bats use those mines. So much research about, and obviously a lot of viruses come from bats. Public health research about physics and dark matter and dark energy and all these kinds of things that they're looking in these kind of very, very deep underground places. Stuff about minerals and earth science. There's so one episode I had and I was really excited about was mines, and part of the reason we didn't end up doing it, and who knows, maybe we would in the future, was it just visually, it was like, oh, it might not be appealing to just constantly underground for 45 minutes. But there were some really, really promising, exciting, that was just one. We had so many that were so exciting, and I want to do, but we'll see how it goes and whether I get to.
So I think that's about the list of questions I had. There will be more, and let's see if is a season 2. Then we'll again talk more about a lot of things.
Oh, I would love to, and hopefully season 2. Hopefully there will be at least one, and hopefully more Indian stories in there that we will get to. I have some I have some science journalist friends of mine in India who I'm like, it's time. I got to go to India and report some stories, because I love it there so much, and I think that it's just bursting with exciting new stories. Yeah,
and a lot of questions also.
Oh yes. You can't have that many people and not have even more questions.
So thank you very much for joining Cinemax to show. It was a pleasure talking to you about, and also listening to a lot of things that you said. I learned to question more and also listen more. I should thank you for that and the show. So,
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity and for such great questions from you.
So thank you, and
thank you, Avinash. Yeah. Thank you so much.